Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to my hobby blog. I am excited today because I talked about this already in my weekly video, but I finished Junji Ito's No Longer Human. This is an adaptation from a short story, I believe, by Osamu Dazai. And I loved this book, and I'm more of a fan actually of his other work, Uzumaki, which is upside down. Here we go. Uzumaki. Junji Ito just has one of the most iconic art styles I think I've ever seen. And this will be a non-spoiler review because I don't really want to spoil the surprises all that much, because this is just a very effective psychological horror or thriller maybe, because compared to Uzumaki, which is very supernatural and heavy with ghosts and everything, this is a much more personal story. And from the back of the book, it seems like the author of the original story, Osamu Dazai, he did not have the best mental health at the time, and he was borderline schizophrenic. And so he ended up writing a story, and a lot of people and this is what it says on the back, is that a lot of people think of the story as his suicide letter. And I can absolutely see that, because our main character of the story is very sort of anxiety-filled, and he constantly puts on masks in order to hide his true self, which he thinks is very monstrous and morbid, and he doesn't have the best opinion of himself. So he says that I want to make people laugh in order to hide who my true self is. And we have a lot of different characters intersecting with his life who see right through the disguise, and it haunts him for the rest of his life. And the main character is someone who I feel like has a lot of I sort of understand what this character is going through, because as someone who has had anxiety through most of his life, and sort of as someone who is also autistic, I find myself sort of doing the same thing that this character does, which is having different masks on and sort of having different sides of myself that I emphasize more around particular sets of people, depending on if it's people at work, or people at school, or people who are very close to me, family and partners. And this story sort of goes in very expected but also unexpected ways, because this main character, he is someone who causes a lot of death around him, and is the death of family members, of love interests, and also of business partners. And it's very interesting to read this, because the entire story is through his perspective. And the artwork is just fantastic. I mean, just from the cover itself, I mean, this is a in-world painting that the character draws, because he's a painter. And it's very harrowing what he draws, but a lot of people are drawn to his artwork. And it sort of makes me think of Junji Ito as well, because he's someone who, outside of his stories, is a very charismatic and bubbly guy. And when you read his artwork, or read his stories and look at his artwork, it's very morbid and disgusting and very just gut-wrenching. And it's really interesting to sort of contrast the main character of this story with Junji Ito. And also, I need to do more reading on the original author of the story, but I'm sure there would be a lot of parallels with that as well. And that's what I found really interesting about the story. It's a really long manga as well. It's 27 chapters, I believe. It's a big, thicken. I really enjoyed this. I read it in about 2 days. I mean, I just breezed right through it. I think Uzumaki is closer to my heart, but I think in terms of theme and in terms of the character work, I just loved No Longer Human more than Uzumaki in terms of that light. But I think they're both masterpieces. I had someone on my Uzumaki video actually recommend I read No Longer Human. I'm very happy to have read it, because this was just fantastic. It's very bingeable. I just could not stop turning the page. And the artwork, I mean, there were a few times where I just kind of had to stop and just appreciate the craft that Junji Ito puts into this, because this is not his original story. His original stories are a lot more to my liking, like with Uzumaki, as I said, but also the short story or short movies that he's done for Netflix, I believe, that they adapted from his own works. And it's fantastic. He just has some really interesting ideas, but as an adaptation, I really enjoyed this, and I'd be very interested to read the original source material. I'm not sure if there's a movie on this, but I would love to see an animated movie as well that is done as closely as possible to the manga, because there's some really interesting sequences where the main character goes to hell, or what he views hell to be. And I love those sections the most too, because of the artwork, but also just from the idea of trying to imagine how it could be adapted. And I think it could be done very, very well. But I just love this book. I think anyone who hasn't read this manga absolutely should. It fit right into my Spooktober plans, because I do want to read more spooky books this month and watching spooky movies. But this was just a really great October read, and I recommend anyone to read it who hasn't already. I think this is a really great entry point for the author as well, if you're not as familiar as Junji Ito as I am, at least in terms of me knowing his work a lot more than I guess a lot of people do when they first begin, because I did start with his adaptations on Netflix, which adapted most of his works, I believe, in very short episodes, 20-minute episodes. So I really enjoyed it. It's really great to sort of get into his masterpieces, and I recommend it. Sort of my takeaway from here. But thank you all so much for watching, and please have a great rest of the day.